Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here, happy to sponsor this event. It's a fantastic event, and I want to give congratulations to Adrienne and her team on the quality of the work, the quality of the presentation, and the overall quality of the agenda. So again, congratulations to her and her group. I know that everybody enjoys these conferences, especially when there's excellent information being presented on a project basis. I have a little bit of insight to provide today based upon our experiences in this market, and I'll start with a short advertisement. So, lo siento, un momento, por favor. I will go through this and quickly, and then we'll get into some of the talk about a little bit some of our observations in this business. So. Hatch is an employee-owned company. It's a consulting firm. We're not an EPC firm. We're not a construction company. We're a consultancy. We have about 10,000 people worldwide. And one of the things I wanted to point out today that Hatch has 450 people working here in Santiago in a building not very far away from where I'm standing. This group comprises mining and energy and infrastructure, but a strong focus on local mining projects. So if anybody has any questions regarding projects locally, we're happy to connect and make sure that you're in touch with the right people. Multi-billion-dollar projects has been the hallmark of Hatch's experience. Lots of mining projects are in that type of range. There's no more $800 million gold mines. They're all in the billions. And so our practice is extremely diverse and highly technical and highly client-oriented. So a little bit about Hatch's view of the world. We work on principles, those principles surrounding safety and primarily innovation and quality and sustainability. Sustainability being the hallmark of Hatch's Renewable Power Group, which has about 450 people operating globally. So I'm in charge of the wind and solar businesses here at Hatch. I'm responsible for those two practices globally. So any questions you may have about those businesses here, North America, Europe, Africa, I'm happy to answer. So a little bit about Hatch's geographical distribution. You won't be surprised to see that Hatch's offices follow the mining industry. Sometimes I wish it followed the renewable power industry, but the reality is that Hatch's heritage is in mining. And so the makeup of the offices are as described. Okay, a little bit of our professional services, which are project delivery, consulting, and operational services. Again, these are all intellectual property businesses that we do. We provide people with advice, designs, engineering, project management, project leadership. So our business units, as I mentioned, we're in the mining, we're in the energy, and we're in the infrastructure business. And you see in the second column there, second or third from the top, Renewable Power Group is mentioned, about 400 people globally, a long history, almost 100 years of renewable power experience. So within the mining sector, people here will be interested in copper, and that's obvious, but globally in the non-ferrous light metals, iron and steel, industrial minerals being things like titanium and ilmenite, mining and mineral processing, that's really the design of mines. With our Renewable Power Group, water, wind, solar, hybrid. Hybrid is something, when we say hybrid, what we mean is the injection of renewable power into an existing thermal grid. Hybridization is the terminology. Some people call it microgrid. You'll see the term microgrid floated around a little bit. It's all the same thing. It's about integrating distributed generation resources into existing thermal generating assets. So we do a lot of work in nuclear, which isn't applicable here, obviously, but thermal, power delivery and integration. We have specialists here today from our power delivery and integration group, and that's interconnection. I mean, in a distributed generation context, we're talking about interconnection of medium and high voltage. In the oil and gas business, and I know that folks in Chile wish that we could do some oil and gas business here, but unfortunately there's no hydrocarbons under the beautiful land that is Chile, and so we don't practice too much of that here. So people will ask us, what mining clients do we deal with? This is a sort of global template of the various mining clients that we have. We touch on many, many projects globally. Obviously, a lot in Chile, a lot in South America, but Africa, North America, Canada, obviously, which is our home. And so any of these people that you recognize, there is no doubt that we have worked on some project that you've heard about. We've had somebody on it in some way, and we can make connections to whomever it is that you might desire to talk to. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit, that's the advertisement, it's over, thank you. So I'm going to talk about renewable power hybridization. My apologies to people whom have seen this before. And I think a couple of people mentioned, hey, how you doing? Am I going to see the same thing? Well, this crowd's new, so you're going to see the same thing. So what is renewable hybridization? Hybridization is the addition of supplemental renewables. We're taking thermal assets that may be existing, understanding that there's an enormous base of existing thermal assets within the mining industry, and we're injecting renewable power into them, whether it be wind or it be solar. We don't differentiate particularly we're not biased one way or the other. We're not a solar or a wind developer. We're technology agnostic, but different jurisdictions require different solutions. Projects we do in the Arctic tend to be biased towards wind, obviously. Chile has a good mix of resource in wind and solar, so it would depend upon the specific location here. What it's not is we're not here to compete with thermal generation capex. Our objective is not to suggest that you shouldn't have diesel engines, you shouldn't have a coal plant, you shouldn't have the thermal assets that you need to run your operation. We're supplementing these and we're cutting costs. We're reducing the levelized cost of energy through the injection of renewable power into those grids. We've been doing this, talking about this subject for about 2.5 or 3 years, and I'm going to touch on some of the socialization issues that we encounter, and a little bit of advice or a little bit of insight into our experiences. Understanding that Hatch is made up of a mining group and a renewable power group, and so you won't be surprised that I get similar feedback from my mining colleagues as what you will hear from mining companies. Similarly, renewable power people have a view of the world that is a little bit different than the mining group, and I try to explain their view to folks in my mining group and to our mining clients. And so we're a bridge, and that's the theme of our marketing in this space, that we're a bridge between these technologies and these businesses. Okay, so the energy diversification for mining, it's made up of the economics, the technologies, the drivers. Reducing project power costs with renewable energy, it is the objective. The intrinsic benefits of carbon reduction, these types of things, these are sort of the cherry on top of the sundae, if we could put it that way. It's that little bit that really makes the projects attractive, but we know that these things have to operate on a purely economic basis. So renewable power is not only attractive socially and environmentally, as mentioned, but it also has significant economic benefit. The one thing that we've been doing in this business is having understood that there's a significant economic benefit, there's a significant environmental benefit, there's a social benefit. Why doesn't it happen? And I'm going to discuss that a little bit, but we know that energy from renewable sources is cheaper than the levelized cost of energy. I'm sorry for the acronym. Levelized cost of energy is the dollars per kilowatt hour in an existing thermal operation, derived from a singular input of fuel cost, heavy fuel oil or light fuel oil. Again, sorry about the acronyms, but when we talk about the economics of renewable power, we talk about only versus the reductions in levelized cost that come from reducing liquid fuel cost. It's not viable to suggest removing capital assets, removing thermal assets from a grid, because the uncertainty that arrives from doing so is really not viable. So again, that's what we're going to mention here. So the obvious benefits, we know the environmental stewardship, the optics, and the green energy, but the latent community impacts are something. I'm going to pile some more things into the intrinsic benefits here. Renewable power assets, wind, solar, they outlive mines. Not to say I want your mines to close early, certainly not the case, but if there's projects that are in care and maintenance or projects that are partially through their life cycle, if you take these assets and you position them into a mine that has a 8 or 10 year lifespan left on it, the grid connection that may exist already to that project, or the community that's associated with it, or the care and maintenance activities that take place after the mine is shut, the renewable power project can bring a lot of advantages, a lot of benefits to those projects. And we certainly see this in open pit and other locations where there's an enormous amount of land consumed for the past mining process that can be reused, redeployed for positioning renewable power, and a grid connection perhaps that isn't being used anymore. So there's some other benefits there. Okay, so I'm going to talk about levels of resistance, and this seems like I'm I'm opposing renewable power. And the reason I do this, the reason I talk about this is because in the 3 years that we've been doing this, if you approach people in the mining industry and you said, what is renewable power to you? And they would have said, these 3 things. And we understand why they say them, because at some level in the past, they have been true. And so folks in the mining industry are naturally conservative. All of their risk is absorbed by, understanding what's in the ground. They don't have a lot left to go over and indulge in technologies and methodologies that they're not familiar with. And so there's a natural skepticism, there's a natural reluctance. And what we try to do is bridge between the renewable power industry and the mining industry to understand that these levels of resistance can be overcome. So on the side of expensive, the statement being that that integration costs are manageable and poorly understood. The truth is that integration is manageable utilizing existing interface technology. We don't need to create exotic technologies to interface wind and solar into hybrid power plants, into the existing thermal plants. Renewable power projects have high capital costs. I've often said to people that they ask, what does renewable power cost? Renewable power is free. Solar power is free. Wind power is free. The capital costs a lot of money. And so it's an inverse scenario versus liquid fuel, where the diesel engines, the thermal assets, are very inexpensive, but the sum of the fuel costs over their life is enormous. And so it's difficult to make a very good comparison between them. That requires some work, but understanding that liquid fuel costs for off-grid, I'm going to talk about off-grid here exclusively, but installations are 28 to 32 cents a kilowatt hour. The levelized cost of power has come down on liquid fuel costs because of the reduction in oil, but it's only partially offset the costs because all the distribution channels, all of the margin expectations, all of the costs in the distribution systems for liquid fuel remain, even though the price of a barrel of oil have gone down. I have here, you'll notice that I've stroked out in solar energy is 17 cents and replaced it with 13 cents a kilowatt hour. Even people in this crowd would say, Rob, 13 cents a kilowatt hour, that's a big number. I'm putting that this is a number, if you look at it at an entire levelized cost over a 10 or 12 year period. If you take this, you make it larger utility scale, you extend the times. The way that you manage the integration of this asset really affects this price because, again, we're liquidating a capital asset over time. So this is really a amortization schedule number. But again, it's fallen substantially. Wind was 14 cents, now 9 cents. We're talking single-digit power prices, and these are highly attractive to many mining clients when looking at installations that are in remote locations. As we get into jurisdictions like Chile, where there is infrastructure, where you can connect and you can build, where there's roads and there's facilities and there's competitive markets for construction services, these costs come down. So in this case, we're talking about bringing renewable power assets, being wind or solar, into a remote community and constructing them as a little bit higher levelized cost. Unreliable. The sun doesn't shine all the time. People explain that to me, Rob, it's night. What do we want to do about that? That is true. The predictability of these resources is extremely good. When we look at utility scale projects that are occurring around the world, the financing of these projects is at extremely low yields because the understanding of energy production coming out of wind and solar has evolved enormously in the last 5 years and is considered highly, I'll use the term, bankable. What we do is we manage the size of the installation to make sure that the penetration levels of the renewable power asset do not interfere with the operation of the thermal generating asset. You can get to 30 and 40% offset renewable power injection rates or penetration levels without materially interfering with a thermal generating asset from a variation standpoint. My process plan will experience transients and disruptions rendering the savings null. One of the biggest issues we hear is people say, it's all well and fine to reduce the price of power, but if the plant goes down for a day, all my savings are lost. And so our objective is in no way do we attempt to suggest to people that there is a compromise to be made when adding distributed generation, renewable wind, solar to a thermal generating asset. There's no compromise to be made in the quality of the power to the mine. We would never suggest that that's a good idea. And, again, that speaks to the penetration levels, be it 30, 40%. We can't have situations where you get a phone call saying my plant's down because the wind didn't blow today. This is not viable. And we don't suggest that to anyone. Unproven, that's certainly not the case. Diesel is a very recent technology. Wind, solar, hydro were the way that the industrialized world was powered. What happened in the 1950s is somebody invented diesel in the 1940s, and a lot of these innovations, or a lot of these technologies and renewables got set aside for the convenience of diesel and the incredibly low cost of diesel fuel at that time. I show a picture of the Frank Shuman array in 1912. Some folks here in the CSP business and the concentrated solar business will recognize this type of trough array, which is in use today. Some of them are in use in Chile. This was around more than 100 years ago. So this is not new. It's just been improved over time. So we're not talking about radical things. I'm going to speak a little bit to the the project challenges that we've seen. Primarily, the issue that, as we've worked through this over the last bit of time, is that there's a bit of distress in the mining industry. And that distress is related to commodity markets, but mostly uncertainty that relates to people wondering when they'll recover. Everybody knows that the mining industry will recover over time. In that context, it's important to remember that the quality of the information being put out by the renewable power business is incredibly important. And it's really important because the folks in the mining industry still have some uncertainty surrounding this technology, surrounding the projects, surrounding the impact to their plants, and the credibility of the information that they receive is incredibly important. Hatch has spent a lot of time on this subject simply to communicate to the mining industry that this is a credible alternative, that the options that are available are technologically well proven, that they are going to deliver the cost that the client expects, and that there's no risk to the project. And you'll see that in our approach. You see that in the way that we look at things. What we do encourage you to understand is that these projects are project financed because of the large capital cost, and that there's a need for a sincere and patient approach on the fact that the financing of these projects, the equity side particularly, require people to sign up for investments that are of uncertain, in their view, an uncertain quality, and so a lot of work has to go into convincing them that these investments make sense when compared to industrial scale, and utility scale projects. Those utility scale projects typically signing PPAs with taxing authorities. So we know that the mining community is not a taxing authority, that it's a private enterprise, and that the due diligence needed to make sure that the project meets everybody's objectives is the central ingredient in driving this industry forward. And so that's where we pay where we spend our time. So again, you didn't hear me talk a lot about technologies today or efficiencies or kilowatt hours per kilowatt meter squared, this type of thing, because this is well understood. This industry will move forward when there's a comfort and there's a sense of security, that there is a sincerity amongst all parties as to the objectives and the goals. And so that's our view of it as of today, and we look forward to answering your questions if you should have any, and assisting this industry to move forward to the benefit of our clients, both renewable and mining industry. Thank you.